Hello, hello, and welcome back for another spotlight on an amazing leader. And today's guest is like no other, someone whom I have watched from afar or on the periphery and the fringes for a while, someone who I've admired and seen the great work that she's done both here in Australia and around the world. And I guess someone that I was like really keen to dig in and find out a bit more about. And recently I went to a book launch of hers and yeah, was really deeply moved by what she shared. And so today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Cathy Burke to the podcast. Hi, Cathy.
Hi, AJ. Hi, everyone.
And it's beautiful to have you here. And I'll tell people why you're so special. And I think there'll be many people who are listening who have no doubt met you, have seen you, heard of you before as well. But as far as leadership goes, Cathy is recognized as a leadership expert. And I think you've had a few iterations in your career, so we'll dig into a bit of those. Former CEO of the Hunger Project Australia, and I think that's where a lot of people would potentially know you from. And you've also served as the global vice president in South Asia and Africa. And I love that through the Hunger Project, you really look at that grassroots leadership and how you support people in their actual communities to lead. And so we're not just talking here about corporate leadership. We're talking about leadership as humans and as people and humanity. And Cathy now has a consultancy firm and works a lot in the mindset area. And as we all know, the mindset is kind of the bedrock and the grounding of everything leadership. And so I'm super excited to have you here. And I know we mentioned before we hopped on that you live in a subtropical rainforest, and I'm here out in the boardroom in the bush. So from Wonnarua and Darkinjung land, I pay my respects to custodians. Welcome, and I honour the custodians and the land that you're coming from, Cathy.
Thank you. That would be the land of the Widjabul people of Bundjalung Nation.
Oh, Bundjalung, beautiful. What a beautiful neck of the woods. So
Yes.
long-winded intro. Why don't we just get down to tin tacks and tell us a bit about how did you even start into a career that has taken you around the world and doing things like the Hunger Project? Where did that come from?
It is my first book I wrote was called Unlikely Leaders, and I wrote it about village, mainly women, but also men who, despite the obstacles, their background, their difficult conditions and circumstances, their conditioned beliefs, were able to then mobilise their community and end hunger and stop child marriages, etc. And I've resonated with that because I too am an unlikely leader. So people look at what I've achieved, but it was never it was never. It's as much of a mystery to me as it is to anybody else. I wasn't I was never someone who was fast tracked to be anything or do anything. I had my own difficult situation growing up. I fell into punk music. I ran a nightclub. I toured bands. Um, but actually, and I wrote about it this morning in my newsletter and the topic was on how the poison can become the medicine if you sit with
Ooh,
it and work with it enough.
right.
And I was reflecting on that for myself, that this feeling that I'd had from a young age of being an outsider, of not belonging, of feeling ashamed of my situation, I built up a lot of barriers around that, um, actually has become the opposite of that. So I was able to join things that were a little bit on the outside, a little bit ahead of their curve, like even music, but I learned to meditate in my early 20s. I then helped set up the Greens Party in WA and got the first Green senator elected. And all of this was super fringe, AJ. And then I
Mm.
found out about the Hunger Project when my daughter was born and sort of dived into that for 5 years as a volunteer. Um, Went to Ethiopia, went to India. I just kept taking directions in the calling of my own heart and my own soul. versus doing anything that made tactical or career sense. In fact, a lot of people said it was like career suicide, what I was doing. And then as a result, like coming that full circle, I've found that amazing sense of belonging, that sense of connection, that being able to see myself in others, and also stepping into my own becoming, like who I always was as a possibility, as a fragment of a star at some point in the twinkling galaxy, to forge a career and a life path that's been deeply in service and deeply meaningful to me and to others.
I love that. And I'd heard some of the other background, but not the punk music. That's fascinating. And in some ways, don't we all kind of feel like we don't fit in? I think
100%.
teenage years, especially, I've just been doing some work with schools, and the girls in particular, I saw how much they struggle with just fitting in and feeling okay. And gosh, we didn't have social media when we were in our teenage years.
Thank
I can't
God.
even imagine how that is. Um, through all of those breadcrumbs, where was your heart? Because it sounds like you were following that.
I don't think it was that conscious. It was, I think at first I was escaping pain.
Right.
So I was trying to find myself. I didn't have a good time at school. So then when I went to uni, it was like just 2 months after I turned 17, I was able to like reinvent myself. And that summer, I'd also, as I said, discovered punk music. So I was able to create like a different identity. And then through that, I met someone who then I learned how to meditate. Like I had really bad asthma, so I was trying to cure that, but that led me to like holistic thinking and the peace movement. And so initially I was trying to either escape from pain or to fix myself in some way. But actually and this is why the poison does become the medicine. So in doing that, I was able to integrate. But I think certainly for me in my late 20s, I really struggled because I knew I should be getting a career. I knew I should be making money and doing all the things that the first stage of life expects of us. And I had a beautiful, and still do have a beautiful husband. Had my first child. Like I should have felt really happy and like a kind of like, what else am I supposed to, like I'd sort of achieved it in a way, although not the financial success, but the other stuff. And I felt a profound sense of unease and still this sense of alienation. And again, that drove me to reading. So I came across Joseph Campbell and The Power of the Myth in my late 20s. I read Martha Graham's beautiful autobiography. And in it, she's the iconic choreographer, dancer of the 20th century. And in it, AJ, she talked about this feeling she called divine dissatisfaction and blessed unrest. And it helped me. Even now when I think about this, like it still moves me and gives me goosebumps. I was able to then reframe this feeling that there was something wrong and I needed to fix myself, which just felt like, oh my God, into actually this is normal. This is like my soul's evolution towards growth. This is the calling towards me expressing myself beyond the confines that I was in. And actually there's nothing wrong with that. So I was able to stop almost psychologizing myself. What's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? And step outside myself and sort of see it. So that sort of, Joseph Campbell, all of his work about, myths and stuff. This is the dawn of the internet or before the internet even. So it was sort of really hard to find information. You just I felt like a freak. I've obviously subsequently found out so many of us felt the same way, but we didn't have a way of connecting with each other. So you're in your own little bubble thinking, God, I'm just so dissatisfied. What's wrong with me? And as I said, Martha Graham was able to reframe it in terms of something really poetic and really powerful. And I sort of stepped into that and really sort of owned that. And even now I still welcome that sense of blessed unrest, really, and seeing it as it's part of the territory of being human, is to always feel this this sense of never quite at
Yeah,
ease, but also I do feel deeply grounded in my own sense of self as well.
I love that. And I know for me, same thing. Often in business, you can feel like, oh, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Should I be? And for me, as soon as I go out and walk with country and sit on the land, I drop back into, oh no, all is well, all is good. So it's like our Western world can zhuzhy us up into a bit of a frenzy or unsteady that kind of groundedness that we sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so much I want to dig into. Books, I love that kind of books were your connection and community to so much. And no wonder you're an established author that's written prolifically as well. And I love the language that you use, even thinking about poison becoming the medicine. I'm like, wow, they're really strong words. It's not like you're saying discomfort or something, you know, the poison is very strong. And meditation at such a young age. I didn't get into meditation until my very late 30s. And gosh, I can't even imagine what life might have been like if I'd discovered it much earlier. I'm curious about how it has embedded into what you do in mindset work now. And I'm imagining a lot of your own personal journey also helps you show up for clients and people you work with. How do you utilize and draw on that richness in what you're doing now?
So, mindset is absolutely foundational to the work that I do now, but also the work that I was involved with for 25 years at the Hunger Project. Although in the late 90s or mid 90s, we were never calling it mindset work. We were just talking about changing people having a different view of their own power in relation to difficult circumstances. But obviously now we all know it's mindset. When I first started spending time, particularly in like Ethiopia, India, Bangladesh, Uganda, Malawi, I've spent a lot of time in those countries in particular. I did find it, I found it hard to hear that mindset was really the key. So if you're talking to a woman or a community or a family in a village and there is no fresh water, food is scarce, I've been denied education because of my gender, I was married at 13, etc. I don't have any power or agency. To hear that mindset is like the first step towards transforming that situation initially felt a little bit like sort of almost like victim blaming or like what? Like, and it's because I'd somehow mixed it up with sort of positive thinking or affirmations or that sort of stuff. But over time, over the decades, I'm really staunch around the power of mindsets, because what I came to see quite quickly is that, and I see this now with my clients now, that working with mindset, you're still fearlessly appraising the situation that you're in. So this is difficult, my budget's been cut, this is happening, etc. But what you're questioning is the story about yourself or the situation that you're telling. So in a village, yes, all of these difficult things are happening, but is it true that God has deserted me? Is it true I'm a woman, no one will listen? Is it true I don't have any power to change this? When that piece was transformed, then, and it is mainly women, but people would start to see other possibilities, other resourcefulness. They may not have money, they may not have this, but they've got connectivity, they've got community, they've got their voice, they've got solidarity, they've got other resources that they can utilize. And so that became the power that they had. And it's similarly for us that, organizations are going through a lot of changes, or you in your personal life, a lot of scarcity. So I do a lot of work, AJ, with the scarcity mindset. So it's not saying that you only have $10 in your purse, and I'm not trying to gaslight you about your financial situation or about, you know, whatever's happening, but it is challenging the story of your powerlessness in the space of that reality. And that's really the power of mindset. And so I do a lot of work with I know you've actually got someone who also works in the NDIS, but different NDIS organisations, and it is like it's just a mess. But I'm never trying to, and a lot of scarcity there, but I'm never trying to say it's not a mess.
Right.
But so given how it is, what am I committed to? Who can I be? What can we do? What else is possible? Versus getting trapped in this sort of cycle of story. So mindset's really key, but I actually don't just work with mindset. So my frame that I use is certainly mindset. It starts with mindset, but then there's heart set. So, because you can't just figure your way out of a shitty situation, right? Because then it can fall into positive thinking or whatever, which absolutely
Pollyannaizing.
I'm sure it has its place, but not in leadership.
Yes.
You can't just figure it out with your head. So a lot of the obstacles that we face, the challenges that we face, our reactivity, our hopelessness and despair even, has that tenderness component to it, has that heart component to it. And I like the word tenderness. There can be a real tenderness there, and we do need to tend to our feelings, what this is bringing up for me. We need to access courage, which, as we know, is from the heart. Because a lot of our reactivity that we have, or our sense of despair or frustration or whatever, often it is seeded back in the past. So like a really, not that silly, but an example from me is one of my, we talked earlier about a sense of belonging, but AJ, I was never picked for the netball team, and I really wanted to be picked for the netball team. And so all the girls, for the two different teams, and, everyone's putting up their hand, pick me. And I was never picked. And it was always between me and the person with one leg almost, and they would pick that person rather than me. So I had this thing for it's so ingrained that of not being picked in some way, but I can see it now immediately, that sort of mindset of feeling like, oh, was I excluded then, or was I whatever? It's actually a fractal of just that earlier time. And also now I fully understand why, because as a chronic asthmatic, can you imagine, I was so skinny and I was just wheezing the whole time, nearly passing out, lack of oxygen. But still, I was still so plucky, pick me. And of course they're going to pick the, blind, the blind person with no hands to play on the netball team before picking me. So my point is that often our leadership drivers are often just, so there's a tenderness there. I can look back at that little Cathy, that 10-year-old plucky little Cathy, and also know that she's not me now. So heart set is the other thing, is accessing also the discomfort to move out of what is familiar, even if it's not working for us, into something that gives us a bigger sense of possibility. So that's heart set. And then the final frame that I work with people is what I call soul set. The soul, so you can have the right mindset about stuff, and you can have the right heart set. Yep. I'm going to grow my business this way. But if it's not fully aligned with what's calling you now, with the stage of life that you're at, so as we move into the second stage of life, usually around late 30s into our 40s, questions of meaning become a lot more potent than questions of just fitting into society. So if we're not addressing those, we end up living like Carl Jung and others said of, we spend our life climbing the ladder only to find out it's been up against the wrong wall. So this sense of soul set, having the courage to not even, yeah, to giving space and honor to these other yearnings and longings and demands within us that seek something broader and larger, especially when it feels like a threat to my current situation. But through those three things, and having the right mindsets, right heart set, but also digging into the soul set, especially in your second stage of life, is like the triumvirate, the three key things for leaders to fully lead in their most powerful, unfettered, glorious, joyful way.
I love, love, love what you're talking about. And I feel like it almost mirrors the leader's path, the pathway of leadership, where when we're first managing a few people and we're in it, we're probably more in the mindset, it's all about the thinking and how am I handling this, and how am I showing up. But then people will evolve often to a bit more of the servant leadership, which is kind of the heart set and going, okay, now I'm responsible for these people, and how am I going to empower them and engage them and bring them on. And that last part around soul sounds very aligned with what I talk about with steward eldership, which is now, how do I steward legacy for the future? And what is it that I'm imbuing and supporting new generations coming through in, rather than just I have a profit to make and a bottom line to meet. I really feel like the world's shifting and opening up. I mean, meditation, if we talked about it 20 years ago in a business sense, people would be like, what? But now it's, talked about and accepted. How do you find the conversation when you're going into organizations or working with leaders? Are you feeling like they're ripe for soul-led now? Are they still in the first two, or where do you find people are at?
So I do work with such a variety of people and organizations, and some who are more like in finance or whatever, can start off a little uptight or think this is like a little weird at first.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and you'd know this, AJ, you meet people where they're at. You don't go in a weird way. So you need to meet people where they're at and take them on the journey that isn't too discombobulating, and also needs to be meaningful and applicable. Otherwise, you're just like preaching, or it's about you and not about them. So, and I don't talk about soul set. I mean, I'll talk about it in the frame that I just said then, but I run whole separate programs on soulful leaders. I run retreats on it. So if you're really wanting a deep dive into soul, people come to that side of things. But the other thing too is that, and I was saying this to I was speaking at a group of like 55 or so entrepreneur women leaders early this week in Sydney. And one of them was, so I think what I was saying was, sometimes I think we think we've got to like do soul, or I'm going to make the soul thing, or they have to like try and work out soul in their business. Like it's a widget that you then need to like click into place and then something else will happen.
I've got that, right? Where people go, oh, I've got that.
Yeah. And actually you can bring soulful leadership into one's facilitation, how you're managing people, really by who you're being. So being and having done some of the work in integrating your own awareness, knowing that you're actually living your own true pathway now as much as you can, and also bringing more of you. So part of the work of soul is that when we're young, we abandon part of ourselves to survive, to be approved of. We tone down the quirky, we tone down the boisterousness, we try to pacify parts of ourselves to fit in. But those parts of us are still there, and like one of them for me is like a little weird, a little fringy, a little on the edge, a little unusual. And the more that I let that part of myself, which is she's in fully, like, this isn't a new thing for me, but
Yeah.
be there, the more access to power, to authenticity, the more I can be with people. And in fact, this reminds me of, gosh, 20 plus years ago, I was a newly CEO at the Hunger Project Australia, and it was a tiny organisation at that time. And one of my board members, he was a finance dude, and nice enough man. But he said to me, Cathy, you need to become a little more corporate. You need to like basically change who you are. And it was also partly you need to be a little more male. It was also how it was sort of coded at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't have a mentor or a coach that you are to people and I am too, I sort of took it on board. And for 2 years, I tried to become what I thought was expected of me as a CEO. So
Mm-hmm.
I wore like suits. I mean, I like a nice suit now, but it's like I tried to fit myself into what I thought respectability leadership was.
Mm-hmm.
And besides the fact that I was really miserable, I lost access to my power, what made it me. The work that I did wasn't as potent. I didn't raise anything like the sort of money that we did. I didn't build the global movement in the way that I could have. I wasn't the sort of help that I was to colleagues and friends across Africa and South Asia. Part of me was diminished. And it was only like I realized this and then reclaimed those bits of me that was always a little bit punk, a little bit anarchic,
Yeah.
brought that back into the equation, and then the whole thing sort of took off. So that's also an example of like soulful leadership, that it may not make sense to others, but it makes sense to you. And it's bringing and claiming again those parts of you that are actually your genius, your secret sauce, the thing that make you you. And
Yeah.
yeah, bringing yourself to it.
The
Yeah.
whole lot. That presence. And I always say leadership's not about power, it's about presence. And
Yeah.
presence, isn't it, is when I'm grounded, I know who I am. I'm good with that, even the uncomfortable bits. I know for me, I tend to have a potty mouth. I can be a bit, jokey and all of that. And when I'm facilitating using that, I know it resonates. And it's
Yeah.
so different when I'm containing that. So I
Yeah.
completely resonate with that. And I think it sounds as though that resonance when you were in that is when then the Hunger Project took off, and you really took it to amazing levels.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that also gave the communities and people you're with the confidence, because they see your certainty, and
Mm.
so they have confidence in you as a leader that you're going to take us somewhere. And all of it. I love that what you were doing was based on strengths as well. And so often we do the little SWOT analysis and go straight to weaknesses, or I'm no good at that, or I'm weird about that, but when we come from that strengths, and even especially in third world countries and countries that need aid, the more we use appreciative inquiry and go, what have they got that's good, and how do we help them leverage that, then crazy amazing things can happen.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and so I'd love you to share, do you have any stories or a time where you were like, I'm so proud of that, or you really saw some transformation for communities and people that you're working with, that really sang to your soul and helped you know this is the path?
I got the part. I guess drank the Kool-Aid and knew the difference right from the beginning. But I also do want to clarify that it wasn't me in villages leading workshops or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was always local people, mobilized and trained by local people to do that, which was also really important because part of the myth around hunger, the mindset around it is that we're poor, we can't do anything, you need to do it. So if you have someone from outside that community coming in with the answers, it reinforces an unexamined assumption that somehow we're not quite good enough ourselves to be leading
Yeah.
this work.
Yes.
Do I have, I mean, I've written 3 books that have so many stories in them. I mean, Frances Weller, the great soul activist, talks about the mature person learns how to hold what's broken and what's beautiful in each hand.
Oh, wow.
And for me, when I think about my 25 years at THP and the work that I do now, like I saw a lot of suffering, AJ, and a lot of hardship, a lot of things that were really unfair, like walking through whole villages in Bangladesh, for instance, in rural areas, and I wouldn't even see one woman, because they're banished to their own little hut. And once I went into a little hut there was a man and his wife there, and on the ground there was not much in there. It was a very poor community and just bamboo structure. And there was this container on the floor, and I'm like, and there wasn't much else on the floor. And I said, "Oh, what is this?" And it was acid. That acid burning is a common, happens a lot. Thrown on women, keeps them in line, and he just had it there as just like a threat. Like, I don't know if he
Yeah.
would ever use or whatever, but it's just there to keep her in place. And I just remember the fury that I felt, and I just wanted to fucking,
Throw it at him.
yeah, or just like I was so angry and hurt. But then I was there with my colleague and friend Badil, and who's from Bangladesh, and the way that he then spoke, because it was all in Bangla, I was getting interpreted. He spoke with this person around not making him wrong, but starting to have him see what this actually meant, and just having those conversations. So, like, I've seen a lot of and heard a lot of really bad things. So there's that side, and have had to struggle with that myself, of keeping myself open. And there's been a few times I've got back from different places and had really shut down, and hadn't, one time in particular, I hadn't even quite realized that I had, but I was so dead inside. And it was somebody who was able to kind of call me to awake. So I wasn't even aware that I was just dead. So there's that. And then there's other times, so many times, where I've been in communities that are running whole campaigns that they run themselves to stop child marriages, and going door to door to stop the trafficking of girls, and spoken to women who didn't have even one sari blouse, who, through working together and getting other older widows on the pension through their own leadership, women now at least had a sari blouse and had food to eat in their older age. And just the way that I've been hugged and caressed and cajoled and laughed at and laughed with, and sat on the ground and been surrounded by chickens and goats and babies, and laughed and sang badly in the few Hindi that I know. So it is that thing, when I think about it, reflect on how it is. It's that it is holding the broken and the beautiful at the same time, and then fashioning something exquisite from that.
And no wonder your model talks about tenderness, right? Because it is that, and it's holding the broken tenderly. But I also really appreciated your distinction around, we're not there to rescue, and it's not like we're knights in shining armor. And that's been my experience working a lot with community here in Australia, where it has been a bit like the whole nothing about us without us, and that everyone has resourcefulness, but sometimes they might need just someone to spark that, or support them, or to say, I believe in you, and then off
We
they go.
all need that at different times. We all
Totally.
need that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm curious about any points of surrender where you have been pushing for something or trying to make something work, or whatever it might be. It could even be authoring books, and then you've had to just go, I surrender. Maybe I'll meditate on it, but I've done what I can, and I have to let God go.
Pretty much my whole career, AJ. The one thing I didn't actually surrender, but it taught me a lot. We had created this is at the height of the AIDS epidemic in the early noughties. And we had created Africa's first local language, rural-based, gender-based HIV/AIDS program, because too often women couldn't determine how, when, where, and with whom sex took place, and men were conditioned from childhood to express their machismo, their dominance, their masculinity through sort of sexual, whatever. So I needed to raise, so I was sort of point person to, there was a team in Africa getting together, like doing the things that they needed to do. And I was the one getting the money together. And I think we needed like $1.5 million, which obviously today doesn't sound like a lot, but, and it wasn't even then, but it was a lot. And we had a really short window of time to get it, because it had to fit in with the monsoon and then the malaria season. And then if we didn't fit this window, it would be another year, and how many tens and tens and tens of thousands of people would die. And I didn't get the money together. So I worked really, really, really hard, and I enrolled people. We had dinners. I bought, I did to the limit of what I knew to do, and it wasn't enough.
Right.
And it was a really, really hard lesson to live with. We then got it together the year after, but I learned a lot about, for myself, I was trying to do it, too much of it on my own, and took on that it was like my role to do. Said I was still, young and learning. And yeah, I felt a lot of, I was devastated actually when that didn't happen. And I took a lot of that on, probably more than what I should have taken on. And that was a really, so I didn't, not answering your question, but I didn't like surrender, like, okay, I've done what I've done, over to you now, universe. But I know what it's like to really want something important, and to work really hard for it, and for the best reasons, and to fail. And then how to reconstitute yourself after that. Because I had a little moment of like, oh, we need to get someone better than me, like I'm holding everything back, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so was a real confrontation with failure, and the pain around that, and then the growth that needed to come from that for me to continue to be of service in the way that I was committed to being.
And isn't that the truth of all leadership, that, people set strategic plans and have their goals, but the reality is, in an ever-changing world with competing priorities and people who fall sick and staff things and weather events, that nothing ever goes really according to plan. And it is our resilience then, isn't it? That ability. And I've had my share of breakdowns that then physically turn into illness and all of those sorts of things as well. And you realize how much of everything you are is hooked into your role or your job, and that's your sense of worth. So when something like that crashes, all of it crashes. And surely that's our path of becoming more conscious, is to realize I'm not responsible for all of that, and yet I'm 100% responsible for myself. And
you can only do what you can do. And then you have to, then you deal with the cards that you've been dealt, really.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing so openly. I know that will help lots of people, and I work with a lot of government leaders, and quite a lot of them at the moment are struggling because there is funding shortages, and they see demand from community for all sorts of things, and they literally just can't service it all. And that struggle of knowing what could be done, but that they can't make it stretch. So it's, very challenging times.
Yeah, I've just written a white paper for organisations on the scarcity mindset. So I can give you the link to that, and people can download it if they want, as a way of starting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be amazing. So we'll pop a link for that in the show notes. Maybe one or two more things before we wrap up, because I'm like, ooh, I feel like I'm only just getting in and I could dig in. Um, but before I ask my final question, I think your recent book that I came to the book launch of and that I loved, and just a fascinating approach even to how you wrote what it's about. Today I saw a revolution. How did that book come to you and land, and what's it meant for you, your journey and your path and what you're doing in the world?
Yeah, so the book that AJ is talking about is called Today I Saw a Revolution. And in one way, it's the biography of an extraordinary Bangladeshi leader who's still alive, just turned 80 now, who came back to his country after a successful emigration to the US. He was a professor of finance to then try and make a difference to his country, which was, Bangladesh, huge amounts of poverty, subjugation of women, corruption, etc. And he's achieved this. He's mobilized literally tens and tens and tens of millions of people, farmers, working women, even some of the elite, to try and bring about the end of hunger. But the way that he's done it has potency for any of us wanting to create change. And in fact, I'm working with an organisation at the moment and taking them on what we're calling like a good to great trajectory. We've just done year one, and so year two is really about how do we start to embed these new mindsets and these new ways of being. And the book Today I Saw a Revolution is part blueprint for that. So even though they're not about ending world hunger in a village somewhere, how do we awaken the people? How do we create a vision for our lives that pulls us forward? What does it mean to be truly committed? How do we actually empower women and root out our own patriarchal conditioning? And what I really loved about Badil's story is that he's been in the trenches now for over 30 years. And particularly at this time, AJ, when things are hard and dark and bleak from a global perspective, let alone from our own, whatever's happening in our lives or organisation, we've lost a muscle on how that things that are worth doing are hard and take a long time. And there are setbacks. So, and for me, I know I won't see the outcome of a wildly better world in my lifetime. I certainly won't see the end of hunger in my lifetime. I won't see the end of fascism in my lifetime. I mean, hopefully I will, but I don't know. But doesn't stop me from putting my shoulder to that wheel, along with millions and millions of others, to have a say in the way the world is going. And Badil and that book, Today I Saw a Revolution, is a beautiful breadcrumb of that it is possible, but it takes work, and it takes great personal cleansing out your own blockages to be of service to something mightier than yourself, and in doing so is the making of you. And so I really wanted this, and this is what's happened since I wrote the book. So all of the profits from the book go back to the Hunger Project. I call it a soul project. So I wrote it around the edges of my actual daily life and business and stuff. But I've had people from all over the world who are, community organizer in, Seattle, to someone in India, to someone, works in the prison systems in the UK, reading it and going, wow, they can take bits of this for their own work and solidarity that they're doing. So yeah, I'm glad you loved the book. I love it too.
And I have to say, I sat with a notepad I started reading it and then was like, oh, and I sat with a notepad to read the book because there were so many things that I was like, I need to write that down and capture it. And I have a thing about not dog earing and highlighting in books because then I lend them to other people. So I had a notepad the whole time because of that. There was so much that was relatable to other parts of life, to clients I work with. And incredible story that's real, right? That is the reality. And I think it really reminded me a lot of the opportunity I've had to sit with Indigenous Aboriginal elders here in Australia, and the wisdom of their leadership that's so deeply rooted and grounded in the whole concept of 7 generations. That the wisdom of the legacy of time. You know, they would always say to me, why the rush? Because I'd always be like, oh, we're gonna do this, and they'd be like, why the rush? Just sit. And the consideration they would give, that the action we're taking today, how will this impact 7 generations from now? And I just imagine how the world would be if people had that lens and the resilience that you're talking about, to, you know, that muscle rebuilding to go, good things do take a long time and are not a straight linear path, and we need to stay
and also are not guaranteed.
Yeah,
I
completely.
think that's the other thing. We're sort of, oh, I'll do this if I can get some. We like this in our business as well. If I, you know, if I think it's really going to work, or only if I've got some guarantee, or if there's some proof. And it's like sometimes, I mean, there's that proverb, I build the road and the road builds me. And sometimes it's in walking that path, you get to make that path. And you can't, there's no destination or roadmap. It's literally, I build the road and the road builds me is.
And it's why, like, I believe in education, but I also go, and experience is still the greatest teacher, and the hardships that we go through are what make us who we are. So to end up, I'd love to know, just right now where you're at, what are you most grateful for?
Well, what's present for me at the moment is that my beautiful, beautiful hound that I have loved so, so deeply for 9 years is in the process of passing away. And I feel, I feel so much immeasurable love for him, appreciation for him. Anyone that follows me on Instagram will know that it's either talking about Palestine or it's my dog Leo at the creek. That's basically it. And we've probably just got a few days, AJ, and I just, that's legit what's in my heart right now, is just immense love for this being that came into our family at a time when I didn't even know that I needed it. And he has just been the most loving, present angel, and his work is done. And that's what I'm really present to right now.
Oh, I so feel that. And bless Leo. I have 3 fur babies. One that's an adopted fur baby, my partner Michael's husky, and she's in her decline at the moment. And interestingly, my Facebook or TikTok channel or something this week, I did a post with her just laying, she was enjoying the cool grass after it had been watered, because she gets hot. And just the joy that they bring, and the unconditional love. There's so much wisdom, isn't there, in the soul of all animals, but you know, the ones that choose us. Well, may his passing be, you know, magical as he returns to the Rainbow Bridge and all the other beautiful doggies that are over there. Thank you so much for sharing and for making me cry at the end. I truly believe what you're saying, that it's up to us to be the 10% that helps tip the world. And that point of surrender requires courage. And given we are in a connected world these days, it's wonderful that we can connect and go, there are other people out here fighting the good fight, doing their piece. And so I want to thank you and honor you for the piece that you do, and also the humility that you have, that, you know, none of us are doing it on our own. And we will pop in the show links, ways people can connect with you, please, please buy the book. I Saw a Revolution. It is phenomenal, and your writing is amazing. You can see that you're very well read. I love the way you write. I love how you've shared today. And yeah, I really just want to thank you from my soul to yours.
Oh, thank you, AJ.
Thank you.